Hello everyone, and thank you all for joining me today to go over our capacity planning and resource management webinar. I hope that you all find it useful. If you have any questions afterwards or during, if you could pop your questions into the questions box and we'll either answer them at the end if we have time. If we don't, then we'll ensure that they are answered at the end. Also, I'm recording this session, so if you'd like me to send a copy over afterwards, please do let me know and I can do so. So, today's topics are: what effect does inaccurate capacity planning and resource management have on an agency? So not only do we want to look at how we can reduce these effects, but we also want to know at the initial stages what the effects actually are to reduce. And then we've also got why are agencies finding capacity planning, resource management a challenge, and how can this be addressed? So we're going to be looking at some of those challenges, and we're going to be finding out how we can reduce them and how we can address them. So to kick things off, I want to look into what effect does inaccurate capacity planning and resource management have on an agency. And just before I do get started on this, I'd like to say a big welcome to all of our clients that we've got on today's session. Hope that you're all well. If you'd like any further information on this, you should have your contact details for your account handler. Please do contact them, and they can either send the recording over. They can also, book in further sessions to go over this sort of consultancy alongside the system Synergist as well. Okay, so what effect does inaccurate capacity planning and resource management have on an agency? Well, from working with agencies, with Synergist for over 20 years now, something that we see more often than not, the effect that I'm going to focus on today is actually our over-servicing. So I've got this, which is from one of our agency food reports. For those of you that don't know about the food report, please do get onto our LinkedIn page, The Agency Works, and you should be able to join. You can get involved with the surveys, and you can also see the results, such as this little preview here. So the reason that I've brought this up is one of the challenges that we keep seeing is actually over-servicing. If you look into the financials, over-servicing, and we've been doing this survey for a number of years now, over-servicing seems to be up there all the time. That also falls alongside increase in profitability. I think they actually go hand in hand with one another. Okay, so sometimes an either reduced profitability or not an increased profitability can be due to over-servicing. So they all do kind of intertwine with each other. You've also got some other challenges in there, which hopefully some of these tips on resource management and capacity planning can also help to reduce. So digging into that over-servicing challenge, which actually, if we look at the reasons for over-servicing, or just some of the reasons for over-servicing, we'll actually start to identify that the resource management capacity planning side of things can drastically reduce this. Quite often people think that over-servicing happens when a job is already live, when actually quite often the over-servicing, it is all to do with the planning, the initial stages, the resource management side of a job, which this can cause over-servicing. So we've actually got it down to, if I can just change that page, there we go, 5 main reasons for over-servicing. So number 1, inaccurate estimating. Okay, so for those of you that use Synergist, you'll know that we've got a separate estimate to the quote. This is something that I will be discussing a bit later on. One of the tips on the resource management side of things, also your capacity planning to get nice accurate plans. I'll be going over that. We've also got spending too much time on a job. That's a massive thing, which resource management can help to reduce. Human error, again, this is something that can't always be helped. Something that, we are all humans, it will still happen, but we can help to reduce this. We can put a nice resource management plan in place to ensure that there's as little human error as possible within the business. If there is human error, we can also put things in place to identify this, potentially spot patterns, whether it be on a particular resource, a particular job. We can just start to view that visibility. We've also got using a different resource. Again, a massive part of resource management. So ensuring that it's estimated to the right resource, it's then scheduled to the right resource, the resource then carries out the work. In reality, it's not always the case. If somebody's on holiday, if somebody's off sick, if somebody's, clients move the goalposts for whatever reason, somebody needs to carry on working on a particular job, another resource may step in. So again, it does still happen, but we can start spotting patterns and we can start reducing this by ensuring that our estimating, scheduling, capacity planning is nice and accurate in the initial stages. And finally, something that I've actually just mentioned, the client moving the goalposts. Okay, so this again is something that if we have nice, accurate capacity plans in place and we've got a nice, clean resource management plan in place, this can be reduced. It can also be reduced by managing the capacity within the business. So ensuring that if the client comes to you with, a deadline, or a client comes to you with requirements in terms of timescales, you can actually have the ability, you've got that visibility to say, well, actually, we haven't got the availability next week, we could do it this week. So actually, it's kind of a bit of a new business type opportunity there as well to get things in quicker. But anyway, we'll move on to that in just a second. So what we need to look at now then, so we know some of the challenges and we know some of the reasons why we're having challenges such as over-servicing and increasing profitability within the business. What we now need to do is to say why our agency is finding capacity planning and resource management a challenge, and also let's try and address this. So we haven't got all the time in the world today, but I'm going to try and give you even if it's just at least a few tips on today's session. Hopefully you've got something good to take away. For those of you that are Synergist users, like I said before, we're more than happy to book in further sessions to look at this in a lot more detail. So please do contact us if it's something that you're interested in. Okay, so I want to start at the real initial stages of any business, which is working out how many hours we actually do have to sell within your agency. Now, I'm sure most of you have got these calculations behind the scenes anyway. I've got a really, really basic one in front of me, and I've also not taken things like holiday, sickness, anything like that into consideration. It is really a ballpark figure, but it's just more around the process rather than this actual figure. So, excuse me. So if we know how many hours that we have available to sell within a particular week, it may be that you calculate this on a monthly basis, which again is also fine. Within Synergist, we have the tools to input this type of information. As I'm sure a lot of you are aware, we do also have utilization abilities within the system. So we can put utilization targets against resource. We can also then analyze those. With the hours sold, we can also keep track that the hours available, we can also keep track that we are actually selling those. For those of you that use the dashboards, we've got a really nice chart on there that shows the hours available, hours sold. If we're selling the number of hours in which we have available, the chances are that we're going to reduce things like resource spending too much time on the work. One of the reasons that over-servicing occurs is through the resource management, but also actually initially, so this area, if the hours aren't being sold, the resource, they're creative people, they enjoy working on the jobs that they do. So if they've got a job in front of them and they've not got something, they've not been given anything else, they will end up spending too much time on that job. Okay, so ensuring that they've got a nice plan ahead of them in terms of what they need to be doing on what clients and what jobs is something where by selling those hours we can reduce at these early stages. Okay, the next area that I want to focus on, and I will be using Synergist as a live example a bit later on in this webinar, but the next one is your estimating. Something that I mentioned previously, we have a separate estimate to the quote within the system. Now, the reason that we have this is your estimate within Synergist should always be an accurate reflection on the client's brief. So this is an accurate reflection on what we need, who we need. Okay, so if the clients come to you and they've said, this is what we want, what you'll then do is you'll go into your estimate and you'll say, okay, if you want that to that brief, this is what resource we need, this is how long we need it for. You also have things like cost rates, charge rates in there, but more focusing on the time aspect, so your resource management aspect. We're giving a true reflection of who we need within here. Now, the reason that we do that within our estimate is because we actually have the quote to do our more financial budgeting, commercial, what are we actually going to sell this for? So I'll try and use an example here. So if we've got a client that's come to us with a brief and we think, okay, we're going to need about 100 hours of resource to do that particular piece of work, which they've requested. It may be that they then come to you with a budget of a certain amount, which, say you may want to sell it for 90 hours. What we wouldn't do is we wouldn't reduce the hours in the estimate down to 90 hours, because actually we still need those 100 hours of resource. Whether or not we're selling it for that, we still need those 100 hours. Therefore, in the quoting area is where we would manipulate that cost. We would manipulate the hours, reduce them down to 90, and that's our selling price. Our estimate is going to fall through into our timeline facilities, our scheduling facilities, and then end up in our creative team's laps. So we need to ensure that we are giving them an accurate amount of time. That will reduce things like them spending too much time on a job. It will also reduce things like human error, because they have an accurate number of hours that they have been given at these early stages. Okay, so hopefully that all makes sense. And like I said before, for those of you using Synergist, I'm sure you're very aware of that type of process. Okay, so I'm actually going to flick over to our system now. So if I just open this up here, I'm going to use a really typical type job example. Please do excuse the terminology for those of you that may use the system slightly differently to what I've got in front of us. For this particular job, I've broken it down into 3 different phases. If I select our Gantt chart, on this one, as you can see, I've got my 3 phases in green. Below those phases, I've actually got some additional stages. Those of you that use the stages, you'll be familiar with this. Those of you that don't, you can do exactly the same at phase level as well. What we're doing here is we're saying, I'm going to use this one as an example. So definition and planning, how many hours have we estimated? So within our estimate, we may have put in, say, 50 hours of this. What we're now saying is, okay, how long have we got to do those 50 hours? Have we got 1 week? Have we got 1 month? Have we got 2 months? What we need to do is we need to put a time scale on those hours, not only for scheduling purposes. So when the traffic manager receives the hours ready to schedule, they have really nice accurate timescales alongside of the tasks, but also for our capacity purposes. Something about the client moving the goalposts, which I mentioned earlier, ensuring that we've got timescales against the hours and the phases that we need within this particular job. If a client then comes to us and says, we've got this deadline, or can we do this work here or there, you've got the ability to look at your capacity plans and say, well, actually, based on the other jobs that we've got coming in, or based on the jobs that we already do have coming in, we don't have this resource within this particular period, but we do within this period. If it's something that you do still want to, if they can't make any movement on that time scale, it may be that you've then got the ability to go away and actually get a freelance resource in advance, rather than leaving that until the last minute. I'm going to show you an example of the capacity reports while I'm on this subject, actually. For those of you that use the data viewer, this is a really, really useful report. Using the Gantt chart, like I said before, makes it really nice and accurate. If you haven't got access to these type of reports, again, please do contact us, because they're really nice and easy to set up. We can organise some sessions for you to ensure that you do have this type of visibility available within your agency. So here I've got a really simple one. I've got my resource along the left hand side, and what it's done, all of those jobs that I've put the Gantt charts against, it's then calculated how many hours I need of each of those resource, and I've got mine split into months. You can do that into weeks as well if you want to. I've got a nice chart there just to identify as well. So it may be within this chart, we can see that perhaps we've got a developer. So here we've got a senior developer, which we can see we've got way too much time estimated against it within a particular period, in which case what we might, in April we can see there, so we might want to actually get in advance some freelancers set up because we know that the capacity and in terms of their availability, we've got too much there. Okay, so that's a really nice indicator and a really nice benefit of using our Gantt charts. So the next area that it's also a benefit to is the calendar bookings tool. This is it's almost like an interactive whiteboard. This is our scheduling tool. Traffic managers out there, I'm sure you guys are all very familiar with this. So for those of you that are doing the planning side of the resource management, ensuring that you've got those dates against the hours in which you've got estimated, which are nice and accurate by keeping the estimate and quote separate. This here is where your traffic manager will then be able to schedule really nicely and accurately by just dragging and dropping, and you can move things around like so as well. Okay, there are further data view reports to look at things like who's available and who's booked. So rather than viewing it within this view, you have got further reporting that can show you that type of capacity plans. Okay. So finally, I want to go over some of the tips that I've just covered just by going through the system. I know, like I said before, it is a very brief look into the capacity planning resource management side of things within the system. I hope that you've got some good tips from that, and let's just cover those now. So, number one, estimate accurately and honestly. I'm going to say again about a lot of people think that over-servicing, one of the big challenges, one of the effects of inaccurate resource management happens at the job stage, so when a job is actually live. That's not true. If we estimate accurately and honestly, this will drastically reduce the over-servicing aspect, which is, as mentioned before, one of the effects. We've also got schedule hours from the estimate. So ensuring that those hours are scheduled from the estimate means because our estimate's accurate, we know that we're going to be giving our resource the accurate number of times. So it's accurate at the early stages. That will then fall through really nicely, nice and accurate timescales, nice and accurate plans, nice and accurate scheduling. Will leave the resource having accurate schedules for themselves. Okay. So each individual will be able to see what time has been scheduled to them, knowing that they've got enough time to complete those tasks. Okay, and I'm going to try not to say accurate any more times. Okay, so report on capacity. When reporting on capacity, what you then have the ability to do is make more informed business decisions with your clients, ensuring that you've got all of those hours within there and you know the capacity that you have, so you know the hours that you've got available within the agency, looking at the capacity plans, comparing it against the hours that you've got available, looking at the different resource that you've got. It will not only give you the ability to plan ahead for freelancers, but it will also give you the ability to go back to your clients and be aware of your availability, okay, and things that you can, in terms of timescales, what you can do for each of those clients. Set accurate timescales on jobs. That is something that I have just mentioned and that I've been talking about the whole way through. So hopefully you've got some really nice tips on how you can set those timescales using the Gantt facility. And finally, have all features integrated. So those of you that use Synergist, this is a massive benefit of the system, is that actually you have all of this in one system. You don't have to use Excel. You don't have to go away and feed through spreadsheets and try to form the visibility that actually Synergist gives you in a simple click. If you need help gaining that visibility, please do contact us again and we'll be more than happy to help you access that. It may be that we look into the processes that you're using alongside of the system to ensure that you get the visibility that you're after for the resource management and capacity planning side of things. Okay, So finally, I just want to cover some of the benefits. I'm sure these are all very obvious anyway, something that I have just mentioned, that it will give visibility to make more informed business decisions regarding availability. It will also, improve organisation within the business. So having everything all in one place will help to improve organisation. Also ensuring that you're giving your resource the right number of hours, that you're estimating accurately, and that you've got those capacity plans at a click of a button will help organisational aspects. Also, by doing all of those things, you're going to have happier staff. Your creative team will be happier because they're not being given too little hours. Your clients will be happier because you can give them the availability that they want. You can also actually, a tip on that is with the Gantt facility, you can actually create a PDF version of that and you can give that to them. This could help them move in the goalposts. So if you've given them that visibility, it may be that you can't move on. You might have dependencies on there and milestones. So you might not be able to move on to the next stage of the job until you've received like an approval type process off them. In which case, by providing them with that at the initial stages, they're fully aware of your timescales. So if they then do move the goalposts, they would know that it's almost down to them rather than it down to you. Okay, so you can set that in place before the job even commences, just so they know when you need things off them and when you're planning to commence each task. Okay, and obviously happier management for those using the system, also for those trying to do things like reduce the over-servicing, increase profitability within your business. Capacity planning and resource management does make a huge difference to a business. It is part of the process that does help things such as the over-servicing, increase in profitability, many other things. Those are obviously the topics that I've just focused on today. That's all from me. I hope that you have gained some nice tips from today's session, and I hope that you found it informative. If you would like any more information, please do contact me and I can pass you on to your account handler. My email address is frankie@theagencyworks.co.uk. You should have an email if you've joined this webinar anyway with my contact details on. So I hope that we speak with you soon, and thank you again very much for joining me.